Rick, hope you're doing great, man. It's so good to see you. Can we do one more?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. This is going to be titled Pebbles in the Shoe. And so there are a couple of things that we've been doing at Mayo Clinic and over the last couple of years that where I really kind of got a different context of what this phrase means. And one of the physicians I work with, Dr. Cynthia Stunnington, we use this term about this is what was really causing burnout with staff is that it was little things, over a long period of time that were wearing people down. And so when I went to a conference yesterday, it was a well-being summit, and we had these people that were former Mayo Clinic senior leaders that really wanted to like expand this idea of well-being. I mean, really expand it in a way that is embedded within, organizations. And it was really good. This whole conference that they did, the turnout was phenomenal. They are known internationally for the work that they're doing. They're studying people and their habits and communities. It's really phenomenal. So one of the things that they were talking about was pebbles in the shoe, and it was from a quote inspired by a quote from Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali says, "It's not the mountain or the climb that wears you down; it's
Yeah.
the pebbles in the shoe,
Yeah.
on that journey." And so that got me to thinking about, okay, how is this a metaphor for my life? Like, what are my pebbles in the shoe? And the pebble in the shoe for me has been my ego, my the personal mind, the little Keith 1.0, whatever you want to call it. Those default settings of complaining, resisting, judging, those are the things that have taken these neutral things that happen in life, these things that are all a part of experiences that come with being a human being, and making them a problem, like making every one of them a problem. So when I got stationed in Yuma, and I wanted to be stationed in Tennessee while I was in the Marine Corps, when that occurred, it wasn't Yuma that was a problem. It was my resistance to being stationed in Yuma for 4 years that was a problem. And that was my pebbles in the shoe. It was my inability to handle what was the reality. It was my inability to to make peace with it, to see it as an opportunity, to realize that I had a choice. So that was wearing on me every single day. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Arizona's so hot. Arizona's so hot. Just all these things were just wearing me down, Rick. And so people ask me how I get through it. How do I get through it now? You still live in Arizona. The summers are still hot. How do you do it now? The way that I do it now is because it's not about me being resilient. It's about me being wise. Someone told me that say, I don't want another like technique or program about that teacher tells me I got to be resilient. Okay, let's change the language. Be wise about how you want to spend the rest of your life. Do you want to spend it suffering, or do you want to do something different? And for me, I want to do something different. And so I started to say, I will not put any pebbles in my shoe. like anytime my ego wants to like complain about something, I'm like, oh man, how did I get in my shoe? I'm taking my shoe off, Rick. I'm like, the pebble in there. Let's get that. If life puts one in there, that's one thing, but it's really my resistance to what's going on. And so I'm shaking pebbles out all the time, Rick, that might creep up into these Nikes. It's like, no, and what I found is, Rick, man, the journey is so much different. And it's not about the life being hard. Life is hard. The Buddha says all of life is suffering. The climb is arduous. I know that, but I don't want to make it worse. Rick, I've said this a million times. One problem, what's worse than having one problem? Two problems. So one problem is enough. I already got to do the climb. I'm already going up the mountain. That's problem number one. Me complaining about it, me resisting, problem number two. I'm good with one problem. So I'm not going to make having pebbles in my shoe be problem number two. Rick, what are your thoughts?
Boy, that's beautiful. That shows a high degree of functionality, Keith, when you're able to do that. I think Ali is right. That, when you're training, it's easy to see this in the physical context. When you're training, if you have that problem of always thinking how hard it is to get up, Or, do I have to do squats today? Maybe I'll just do upper body and not legs or whatever. When you create those things in your head, it's another layer of suffering. I mean, it's hard enough, as you say, to climb the mountain, much less to deal with the pebbles that are really in your own mind, but you think are in the shoe.
Right.
Suffering is a very interesting thing, and we don't realize to the extent that it's self-imposed. You can literally decide not to suffer. You will still have stimulus. You'll still have things that will cause you to feel terrible and inadequate, and all of the things that we feel as human beings. But how we manifest the reaction to that, how we react to it, is critical. One of the things that helped me in the practice a while ago that was very, very important is I read a book that's only 100 pages, and I pulled it down when you said we're going to talk about this, and I want to share it with folks. It's called No Mud, No Lotus, and it's Thich Nhat Hanh. And it's you can see it's very thin. It's not maybe 100 pages. But one of the things that he talks about a great deal is suffering and self-imposed suffering. And what I wanted to share with the viewers was a quote. It's a little long, but I think it's important. He says that non-judgmentally recognizing and embracing the suffering that comes from other things is not the same thing as giving into it. Once you have offered your acknowledgement and care to this suffering, it naturally will become less impenetrable and more workable.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the chance to look into it deeply with kindness, and then to find out why it has come to you. You have to remember that it's something is trying to get your attention, to tell you something. And now you can take that opportunity to listen. Anyway, it's a terrific book. And for people who are going through suffering and struggling with mindfulness, man, I think it's great medicine.
Rick, that is fantastic. And like you said, I mean, the climb, that is what it's going to be. And this whole idea of suffering, like that is literally self-imposed. And we did a podcast a while back, early on in the early days, episode, I think it was 26. And the title of that podcast was Pain is Inevitable, Suffering is Optional. And it's true, like pain and things being hard as part of the human experience, nobody's escaping that. But your relationship with those, challenges, with the things that come with being a human being, that's what has the suffering, the choice of how much you suffer or whether you suffer or not. And for me, like all the suffering wasn't bad, because I had wise people around me like you that were like, hey, why don't you take this path? This path is going to be more peaceful. I was like, no, I'm on my own path. No, come over here, Keith. This is going to be a peaceful path. And so I had more suffering. Mm-hmm. And that suffering eventually got to the point where I had enough, and it became my teacher. Mm-hmm. You walk enough miles with those pebbles in the shoes, you take a moment to take the shoes off and shake the pebbles out. And that's what suffering did to me. I had enough of that I was like, okay, that's enough. And suffering in that point, in that way, became my teacher. Mm-hmm. And now what has happened is I don't need the pebbles in the shoes or the suffering anymore to be my teacher. I'm listening to people that are wiser. Like I'm watching their path, and like, oof, that path looks great to me. That path looks fun, but it's got ego written over it, and there's suffering waiting. That's suffering, along that path. I don't want that path. And so I don't need life to teach me in the same way that I needed it before, because of our practice, being completely committed to it, it is literally non-negotiable for us. And because it is, we minimize, the number of pebbles in our shoe. Now we sit down, or we sit on the floor, we put our shoes on, and we are lacing them tight. They are tight. And what the laces are, that's our practice, where everything comes into us. We see it. We don't judge it. We treat it as neutral. We treat it as coming uniquely to us to serve a purpose, with allowing us the opportunity to make whatever the situation is better, to raise it. And that's what we're doing every single moment. We're being more conscious and mindful of exactly that. So I've been grateful for the pebbles in the shoes before, Rick. I'm trying to minimize the number that get in my shoes today, so that, because the climb is tough enough, and the climb is much more rewarding when I'm not stopping and complaining about what's going on. So, Rick, thank you so much for a great show. Do you want to say anything to close us out?
I love that shoelace metaphor, that the shoelaces are the practice that keep the pebbles out. They actually keep the judgment about the pebbles out. The pebbles are still going to flow in, and no matter what you do. But the judgment, that's optional. That's something you can control. Beautiful, Keith. Beautiful. Thank you.
Absolutely, Rick. Thank you so much. I love you.
I love you. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.